Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Christina Lingell. Christina, over the weekend, you had the opportunity to attend a rally with Bernie Sanders and other congressional Democrats that he called the Fighting Oligarchy Tour. And this is interesting because it was really aimed at working class voters who have been really swinging in favor of President Donald Trump in recent elections, particularly in 2024. And Senator Sanders was there to make a plea to say that his policies and the policies of the political elite and the corporate world, that they really are against the worker. And I think the easiest way to kind of look at this would be when we look at the tariff discussion. And so you actually spoke with Congressman Chris Deluzio about his opinion of how these tariffs that Trump wants or that is enacting, how they really are impacting workers and the working class and the places that they rely on for their income.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I mean, Bernie Sanders is doing Bernie Sanders, right? Like he's had the same positions for a very long time. And he represents a side of the left in America that has kind of been consistent, but really diminished for a long time. And that's a very pro-worker stance. So it's interesting to go to a rally like that when people are frankly so fired up and angry about Donald Trump specifically, because it is an opportunity for that message to disseminate amongst people who weren't necessarily coming from this. They're not necessarily associating the Democratic Party with labor and workers' rights and things like that as they might have in the past. They're there because they're not happy about the economy and they're not happy with a lot of the civil rights situations that are happening under the current administration. But then you get all these people together and there's definitely a through line about workers' rights, living wages, things like that. And so along with Congressman Chris Deluzio, there were three union representatives who spoke as well. And what Congressman Deluzio said specifically about tariffs, I mean, he's a very pro-worker candidate. He's from Pittsburgh and he won his race. It was it's a pretty purple area, I would say. It was a hard fought race that he won. And he's kind of coming at it saying, well, yeah, like targeted tariffs could be really useful in terms of bringing work back to Pennsylvania industry. Specifically, we look at the steel industry. That's really a major, it's not just a major industry in terms of economics for Pennsylvania, but it's very much part of the identity of the state. So I think that that's something that people would like to see strengthened. And I mean, you've been covering it a lot of the U.S. Steel potential buyout and how that's kind of gone back and forth. We actually had a closure right in Steelton of a plant that will cost about 500 jobs, at least temporarily, until the steel industry gets kind of revved up again. And there's just a lot of debate about whether or not the current tariffs will do that or whether it will kind of crush these industries further.
Right. And you mentioned the through line between working class voters who swayed towards Trump and the working class voters who used to support Democrats. And I think, too, we've talked about this before, that one of the successes of the Trump campaign is that he offered radical change. And that's what voters were really looking for. Bernie Sanders has been offering radical change as well. It's kind of always been at the heart of his platform. And it's always been targeted at the oligarchy, which, you know, are the political elite, are your billionaires, are your CEOs, are all of the people who are rich off the backs of the American working class. And there is room there. And I think that's what he's trying for, again, is to draw those people back and saying, I offer radical change, or, you know, we can make those changes, but in a way that actually impacts you rather than just making rich people richer. And I'm curious, when you were there, was that a message that was landing?
Yes, absolutely. And I would caution you to say, I don't think that Bernie Sanders is saying I offer radical change, because I think he's very aware of his age and his time in the spotlight. I don't think that he is, likely to give another presidential run or anything like that. I think he's really trying to motivate, especially doing these rallies that are outside of a campaign. He's not campaigning for anything. AOC is not campaigning for anything. Chris Deluzio is not campaigning for anything. They're trying to motivate the people who they're talking to get involved in government and get involved in creating a change, because I think they're recognizing this really strong dissatisfaction that we have on both sides of the aisle in this country right now, not about different things, but I think we can say, we can put a blanket statement that there is a lot of dissatisfaction right now, and they're trying to use that energy to actually get people invested in political action. And in their case, they're really encouraging people to organize, get active in unions if they're a part of a union already, things like that. So I think that it is resonating with people. The question is whether or not people will then turn and use that momentum to get involved with their state legislature, their local government, to really vocalize what they're experiencing. Because he's talking about things like 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and we can kind of say that. I think you can say pretty definitively that we are the richest country in history, right? We've certainly hit that milestone without necessarily the average person feeling that way. So I think that's a lot of the dissatisfaction that people are coming into things with. And like you said, I think that people are looking for radical change, and anything that appears to be radical change is very appealing. So people are looking for radical change, but I'm not sure that necessarily what these progressive candidates are offering is particularly radical, or it's not new ideas, right? They're talking about just getting rid of the tax breaks that are going to billionaires, taking things like doing campaign finance reform, so that there is not so much influence of private interests and in our government. And I think that they'd like to see that on both sides. We've heard Senator Sanders and a lot of people have criticized Democrats for doing the same thing. It's not really a right-left issue. It's kind of an issue that we just have in our government right now, that there's just a lot of corporate interest reflected, and people want to see that change, I think. So I don't know that it's necessarily a new idea or a right or left idea so much as it's one of those things that there's a lot of strength in that financial power, and so whether or not Congress people who are benefiting very much from their positions as lawmakers are going to be willing to make those changes on either side. That's kind of the question.
It's a big question, and indeed one that I don't know that we'll ever answer at the Center Square, but we will certainly try. Thanks for joining us today, Christina. To keep up with this story and more, follow us at thecentersquare.com/Pennsylvania.